how much do you regret selling the Bitcoin at 5x?
I don't regret that. What I regret is that I invested that in startups. So then I bought ETH for $7, late 2016. Was also a really good deal, right? Then you hold like, let's say 1,000 ETH. I don't even remember, right? But just keeping this then would have been more awesome.
Yeah.
Than moving that in shitcoins.
So this is Thomas and Adrian. We're gonna have
Hello.
a chat about what's gonna happen going forward, both within Spielworks and overall, and everything that's currently going on. Some people will know who I am. Some people will know who you are. But let's kind of get on the same page so that everyone knows with some introductions. So who is Adrian? And I'm not talking Spielworks, I'm talking who is Adrian Krion, the CEO?
Hi, yeah, I'm Adrian. I'm 40 years old, so I'm a kid of the 90s. I would basically play whatever I could get my hands on. I had Game Boys, neighbors had NESs, friends had Ataris, Amigas, and then my parents got a 286 computer. Awesome. Monochrome screen. My mom was doing a programming course back then. I learned programming when I was about 7, I guess. And all I wanted to do is make games. I actually went on to study computer science and mathematics at university. And then actually when I was about to graduate, I was looking at the German gaming landscape and it didn't look very promising. So I was looking for different things and I ended up in finance instead, which some people would say is the same thing as gaming anyway. To me, it's not. But I used to build trading models, trading systems for commodities, right? And that taught me a lot about markets, about game theory, about equilibriums, about all that stuff, right? So we designed some of the largest commodity trading systems in Europe. That was big fun, but it got boring after like 7 years. I spent more than 7 years there. Then I left in 2013 and essentially founded my own first company, a software service company. I also bought Bitcoin in 2013 for the first time. That was early 2013. Right? That's a little bit of myself.
So short version for those that don't know me, obviously my name is Thomas. Used to be the CEO of Woster. My background, very different than yours. I've been a gamer my whole life as well. I actually loved pretty much anything sci-fi related. I think I've played anything from fantasy and sci-fi since I was a kid, plus all the classics. But started my first company when I was 17, sold it when I was 18, did my first exit at 18. Then in 2014, end of 2014, started a consultancy company, worked with all kinds of clients from big ones like EA and Funcom and Sony to smaller tech startups that went really, really well. Sold that company and my portfolio in end of 2016, started Woster in 2017. Went into crypto for the first time much later than you. So I went in 2021, but did very, very well for about a year. Did that and then been advising a bunch of companies on business strategy and then sold Woster to you end of 2023. And now I'm fortunate enough to spend my time primarily helping businesses and then advising. And obviously that's what I do with Spielworks as well. Spielworks. Tell me about how did it start? Where did it come from? What was the beginning of it? What was the original thought?
So, like I mentioned about myself, right, towards the end of 2017, I was like deeply involved with a lot of ICO projects, helping them with tech originally, but then I realized that they need much more, right? There was a lot of ICOs happening. There was the stuff that was going on, right? Everyone was talking about ICOs, and nobody really knew what the real use cases for Web3 and crypto and blockchain would actually become down the road, right? So when I saw the opportunity to found a blockchain-specific company, originally Spielworks was called Chainwise Group. We were doing consulting specifically for companies who were interested in doing an ICO. we had the thought of basically figuring out while being in the field what could drive mass adoption of blockchain and Web3, right? And I specifically was more interested in the Web3 and the consumer stuff, right? And the values of it. I really liked it all. I liked tokenomics. I was spending my time reading white papers and so on. So we were essentially putting ourselves out to do consulting so that we could see a lot of different business models that could come to fruition within Web3. And so we saw about 400 different business models being pitched to us from companies who wanted to work with us. And about 5-6% of those were gaming and esports related. And then it dawned to me, I was like, oh my God, it makes so much sense. Gaming and Web3 makes so much sense. Me having been a gamer, this is exactly what I had wanted. There was this story that I like telling is when I started studying and I was sharing flats with a friend. We were playing Diablo 2 and we were playing this racing game nobody knows. And in this racing game, you could upgrade your car with credits. And then we were like, hey, how cool would it be to actually use the gold that we farm, the grind for in Diablo, transfer that, like flip that over into credits in that racing game and upgrade your car and put like better weapons on it. So cool. Why does nobody do that? Right. And then fast forward 15 years to the early days of back then Chainwise, me looking at Web3 gaming use cases, I was like, oh my God, this is it. It reminds me of that stuff that we had in mind 15 years ago. And this is what I wanted to do. Right. So this is when I started thinking about, okay, what is it that we want to do for Web3 and gaming, right? Because there's a lot that Web3 can bring to the table for gaming, but how do we unlock that? How do we utilize that? So this is when the vision of Wombat actually started, when we had started thinking about, okay, we need to create that hub where users, where players can come on and find their games, play their games, talk to others about games, and at the same time manage and interact with their Web3-based game assets. So this has always been the vision for Wombat, and yeah. This is how we got going on this trajectory for Web3 gaming, essentially.
So you mentioned that was always the vision, right? But Wombat started as a hub, as you said. You've on previous conversations historically, you've always said, it was a mobile version of Steam for Web3, right? For Web3 games. So Wombat, if we kind of break it down, very short version of what it is, it's you have a launcher or a platform where you can find and play different games. And what you guys have done very successfully is using blockchain technologies to incentivize that, right? And to create much better user adoption, much better engagement, conversion rates for the partners, especially Web2 partners who comes to you and wants users. And it's also a good way to teach the users how to interact with blockchain. Where did how's the product evolved? Where did the product on its own start and go from what it was into becoming that hub that I know it as? Like, what has that transition been?
So our philosophy has always been, and that's kind of me as a product person and also me as a tech person, I've always wanted to build things that produce value right from the get-go, right? When you launch something, you want to find out whether this is generating value to its target audience. And once you know that, you can double down on it, right? So what we didn't want to do is raise a bunch of money, maybe through an pre-product ICO, right? And then build something for 5 years and then come out with it and see, oh yeah, we missed whatever, right? It's like, it's all over now. It's not a trend anymore. So instead, what we wanted to do is build the leanest possible product that would add value to people, to the target audience, to people who like playing games and who are interested in Web3, right? And back in 2018, when we started, remember that now feels like ancient times when it comes to blockchain and Web3, right? But back then, there was a massive issue in scalability of blockchains because there was basically just Ethereum, and then EOS had just launched their mainnet and in summer, right? And this, like, everyone was super skeptical about that. And there was a huge problem in onboarding, in basically managing keys, accessing wallets, and all these things, right? MetaMask was horrible to use. So the first thing that we wanted to build is an onboarding solution for people who like playing games to be able to onboard into crypto and Web3 and blockchain very, very easily. So Wombat started out in June 2019 as a wallet, as a gaming-focused wallet, right? We wanted to be the onboarding solution for all these games, all these Web3 games, and we were hoping that everyone would see it the way we saw it, that there's a lot of value that Web3 brings to gaming, and that there's going to be a lot of games, right? A lot of Web3 games that could be playable through this kind of solution. And we launched it. It was very popular among those people who wanted to play Web3 games, right? Because they really appreciated it. It took 13 seconds to get an account with a private key setup to be able to sign transactions on a blockchain, right? From basically after you downloaded the app. It was brilliant, right? There was no other solution like that for gamers. The problem was there were no games, right? So we're talking second half of 2019. So there may be like 10, 15 actually playable Web3 games out there, right? But then we got a lot of users. Because suddenly we had 300,000 users towards the end of the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, which was a lot on Web3, right? And they were like, so what can we do? We got some crypto, we got a wallet. So what can we do with that now, right? And there were no games. So that's when we said, okay, actually Web3 game adoption is not going as fast as we had hoped for. Then obviously we had COVID and the market crashed. Nobody was investing in Web3 games. No Web3 games were coming out, or very few. So that's when we started adding this Web3 component to Web2 games, so that we could have more content for our users, right? Again, this was a problem that we hadn't expected, but we then took on, right? We aimed to solve that. And then we added rewards and incentives and NFTs and so on, right? So this is when we started having this store inside of the Wombat app, and this is from there it basically evolved towards okay, now you can play games, you can manage your assets. Now we're adding the NFT marketplace, which we acquired last year in Atomic Hub. We are adding the social components through acquiring Wasder, right? It's exactly going where we wanted to go.
So a lot of things has obviously been going right? A lot of things there that's evolved because product has evolved good, been user acquisition has been good, retention and engagement has been solid, been able to drive that towards users. You acquired the missing components of the ecosystem that you wanted to build. You mentioned it yourself. You ended up, because Web3 adoption didn't happen as fast as you kind of expected from an industry perspective, and you started adding in a lot of Web2 games and Web2 partners that way, and very much using blockchain technology and Web3 tech, but for the Web2 purpose. What has not been done right? What's been the mistakes? What could have been done better? What's been the things you, in hindsight, would have done different?
I think a lot of that has to do with timing, right? So we were in the market during the 2021-22 run, but we were too focused on the Web2 game components, because this was growing as well, right? This looked really good, but we weren't focusing enough on the Web3 side of things back then. But we had, when we reached 1 million signed up users, this is when we started talking about launching a token and actually becoming a Web3 company, right? But because we wanted to do things right, and we took our time, we missed the window of opportunity to actually launch it within, like, very quickly within that run, within that bull run, right? That basically ended, I mean, I think everyone knows, towards Q2 2022, right? And so we came out with a token a little later. That was in July 2022. But then we were already in bear market. But then again, timing, right? We were underestimating, after the acquisitions, the amount of consolidation work that it it takes to actually get everything together, and at the same time preparing for the next, let's say, good run, or the next more positive, I don't want to call it bull run, right? But the more positive towards Web3 market sentiment, let's call it bull run, right? Where there's obviously then more competition coming out and more emphasis on newer products and projects. And we wanted to be there, but then we underestimated how quickly the market would evolve, and how important it would be to actually be a true, point out the true Web3 values, right? Which we wanted to have, which we always wanted to have, but transitioning the company from focusing on what was creating business in the bear market, right, into what's creating business in the Web3 bull market, and at the same time consolidating all the bits and pieces that we had acquired, right? We underestimated how difficult that would be, so we were too slow, right? We're generally we are able to deliver things fast, but with that we definitely were too slow.
So it's funny because you said doing a transformation into becoming a true Web3 business, right? So if we look at Web2, for obviously me and you have spoken about this a lot, but if we look at everyone around and the industry as a whole, when you look at a Web2 business, it's very much a core, it's a centralized organization, very often a leadership on top that makes most of the decisions, or the organization the team makes the decisions. You do that based on business analysis and the data that you have available to you. You build a product, you ship it, you create a marketing strategy for that, and then you announce it, right? Then you it's done, it's ready, we're going out with it. And you can, to an extent, say that you have a company and then you have customers, right? Clear distinction in the Web2 sense. What to you, when you say, well, we want to become a true Web3 company and a Web3 values, what is that to you? What does that mean when you separate it like that?
That comes with a bunch of aspects, I think. So one is being more public about our strategy, right? Then developing the strategy together with your stakeholders, then making your users and your partners actual stakeholders, right? In terms of, I don't want to say shareholders, but Web3 tokens, obviously, right? And also sharing value, the value that's being created within the Web3 network that we're building, sharing more of that with the stakeholders, with the token holders, right? So I guess that's probably the four most important things. So, and if we get into a little bit of a detail there, right? If we discuss putting out a roadmap and sticking with it, right? That's something that we haven't been really good at, because we feel most comfortable building something, and when it's ready to be shipped, and it fulfills our definition of, let's say, a minimum viable product, at least, right? Then we announce it, and then we shove it on everyone, right? So that is what we feel most comfortable with, because of the expectations and the delivery on the expectations that we want to set out, right? But that means that we're neglecting the need for information about, hey, what's your plan? What's your vision? How is that actually making sense, all this, right? By stakeholders, by token holders, and so on. So that's something that we're working on changing, right? We have hired a bunch of people who help us with that. We're building strategies to do that, right? So I think that's very important that we move on this. So that's one part, right? Second part is we've had votings, token-based votings, right? In terms of governance, whatever you call governance. Obviously, there is a little bit of a legal implication to this when you call something governance. How does that relate to shares on whatnot, right? Do you want to make your tokens security tokens? No, you don't. But there's definitely governance and decisions that can be put into the hands of the community. And we wanted to start that with stuff with decisions that are non-scary, right? That are like easier to make. So these are decisions that we've had token voted by, right? So that's what's the right duration boost inside of Dungeon Master for the next season, right? And these kinds of things. But that's not really relevant in the grand scheme of things, right? So that doesn't really change the trajectory of the ecosystem. So that's something that we want to employ. We've always kind of said decentralization is a process, right? So the only truly decentralized network that's been put out as a decentralized network effectively has been Bitcoin. Everything else has started out more as a centralized entity and has been decentralizing over time. So that's maybe not everything else, but a lot of the things, right? So that's something that we also wanted to employ. So we said, okay, let's do that step by step. And now is obviously the time where we need to push harder on that and accelerate that, so that there's more decisions that are being made by the community, for instance.
Yeah, it's funny because you said, initially what you've been most comfortable with is because of, expectation on delivery and shipping and pushing it out when you feel that is ready and you've taken decisions, and letting the decisions that the community make being less scary. But you're now saying that you want to shift that, and that's a pretty major change, right? Letting the community and the stakeholders, whether it's partners or token holders or users who have tokens, letting them in on major ecosystem decisions is a massive change. And you said yourself what you've been most comfortable with. How does that feel for the team? I mean, I'm assuming then you said you've hired a bunch of people to help you do this, but it sounds like that's also an organizational shift and transformation in many ways. How does that feel? How does it? Scary, not scary? Like, what's your overall thoughts?
It's less scary than maybe confusing, right? So what does that really mean? And what are the actual things that are going to happen? And how do we put them so that they still make sense? How do we moderate this, right? And then for the company, how do we think, or for the people inside the company, how do we think, how can we deliver more value to our stakeholders, right? Rather than quote unquote just make revenue, which is hard enough, right? But now it's about how do we grow the community together with our stakeholders, and how do we not just, and that sounds weird, right? But not just us trying to deliver the value, but also giving guidance and asking for the community and the other stakeholders to add value as well, because this is how it all works, right? That everyone is in the same boat, and everyone pulls in the same direction, right? So that is something that will take a little bit of time on our end. We're basically starting the process now. We're doing that publicly, right? So we want everyone to know that we're doing this and that we're committed to it. Hence this kind of interview here, right? Yeah, but it will require a little bit of a back and forth. That's what I'm saying, right? Again, maybe managing a few expectations here. That's what we always do, or I always do, right? Is always to say what we really expect to happen, not trying to oversell and say, oh, everything is going to be different from tomorrow on, because that's not what it is. That's not how it works, right?
To the moon.
Exactly. But to us, that's a process, right? And we want to start the process. We want everyone to be on that journey with us, right? There's a lot of exciting things that we have on our minds. I hope that a lot of people from the community have a lot of really cool things on their minds. I mean, we have been taking in a lot of feedback, right? I have been public on Twitch every week, pretty much for the last year and a half, more than a year and a half, right? So, and that's been really fun, and it's been really, really insightful, especially. And I feel like the people who have been on these Monday taverns, as we call them, on Twitch, they also feel like there's a much stronger connection to the organization and what we do and the decision making, than maybe others who don't have that direct connection, right? So we need more of that as well. We need to be more open and more present on all of our channels, because that's the people who are on Twitch is obviously only a small subgroup of the community and the stakeholders, right? So we need to aim better at reaching them all and at being in touch with them and getting their feedback, right? So I think that is definitely a major shift for us. We need to get used to this. We need to transform the company in terms of we need more people in certain areas when it comes to community management, communications, content, being present, managing channels, and so on, right? So that it all is manageable. Unfortunately, I can't be everywhere all the time. I would love to, right? But we need to build that the channel as well.
So on that note, obviously, this interview will go out on YouTube and be available shortly. But by the time that happens, Telegram community is now one Telegram community instead of the 5 or 6 or whatever it was that we had. The Twitters are getting linked more closely together. And can they, I mean, obviously, I expect that people will be able to see you more in the Telegram now that it's one big and be there and ask the occasional question. But at the same time, you're the CEO, right? So if you spent your day answering every single DM on Discord and Twitter and Telegram, you wouldn't do anything else. So how do we balance, or how are you looking at balancing your presence in the community and seeing that they see that you are there, but also that the team is there, versus, you know, not spending all of your day answering only questions and not getting anything done? Is the plan more interviews like this, that where you talk large scale and they can ask questions as a consequence, spending it in more like dedicated time sessions in Telegrams, or like what's your thought process?
So I think it's going to be a mix, right? I don't know what the reactions on a video like this are going to be. Maybe nobody's going to watch it and nobody is going to care, right? And then we don't have to do it more often, or we will have to learn how to promote that better, right? So that there is more of a feedback loop. I can totally imagine, and that's also something that we've been doing sporadically, so maybe we should do that more often, that there is some kind of an office hour with people from inside the company. That can involve myself, that can involve product people, it can involve marketing people, strategy people, tech people, who knows, right? So that there is a more direct link to the to the people inside of the organization and outside of the organization, because they're all, again, they should be pulling in one direction, right? I can only encourage anyone and everyone to jump on these Monday Twitch sessions, right? That's really cool. There's a lot of questions, and I get roasted a lot there, right? So I'm used to getting roasted. We've been doing this in Discord as well. So I think that doing sessions where for instance, I am present, or whoever else from the company is present, and everyone knows that, and this is announced. Maybe doing that in a surprise manner every once in a while is also cool. But just so that people know there is room for this, right? But it doesn't have to end up me, being expected to answer a lot of DMs, right?
But they can expect to see you more, or they can expect to see more of you, even if it's not in directly in DMs, right?
Yeah, and I like knowing and understanding what's on their minds, what's on everyone's minds, right? And some people have actually made the experience that if they message me, they actually get their problems solved, right? So there's a bunch of people who either they bring up things on the Monday streams, or they find a way of messaging me and getting a response, or then they get things done, and it's crazy because then they obviously utilize that every once in a while. Not overly, and that's good, right? Because they are very thankful for having this channel, because otherwise it would take the oh no, I have to put in a support request, and then this takes maybe a day or two. And but if I text Adrian, we can get things done immediately. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about pretty massive changes overall. You mentioned on an organizational level, on a value level, on how you build. How are we going to see that reflected in? I mean, you've obviously made it very clear that in the new direction, tokens are the stakeholders is going to be a lot more centric, right? You didn't say they're not shareholders for legal perspectives, but you're definitely bringing the company closer to them and them closer to the company. And I'm assuming, obviously, that part of that is making the token or tokens a lot more centric to that experience of being a stakeholder, because it's the method they can participate in. But what other ways, are there more ways that we're going to see that reflected in? I mean, we've talked about in product decisions, but are there other experiences that you think we will also see, or they will notice as a part of that shift?
So there's a few kind of, I like calling them mechanical things, right? Where we change mechanics, and a few kind of more, I don't want to call them storytelling, but more like user experience and community experience kind of things, right? So when I talk about the mechanical things, one thing that we're starting with is, by the time this this interview airs, this should be live as well, is or at least under the hood, is the way we're treating rewards, right? So on Atomic Hub, the people who are aware of that, we hand out Wombat tokens as rewards for people who trade, and at the same time, we use a portion of the marketplace fees to actually buy back and burn Wombat tokens, right? But the way this is structured is a static way, right? So the amount of Wombat tokens that is being handed out, no matter how much trading volume we generate on, let's say, the Wax and the Polygon part of Atomic Hub, is 50,000 Wombat tokens right now. So it's fixed, right? And it doesn't matter if there's more trading or less trading, it's always the same amount. Now on Immutable ZK EVM, we're trying a new reward system where we basically share 50% of the marketplace fees as rewards with anyone who trades, right? So there is a much bigger portion of our of the cash flow that's being created by the people who use it, and that's being funneled back towards them, right? So that's what I mean when I say more mechanics driven things, that we want to kind of give back more of the value that everyone's contributing to create. We want to give that back to the people who actually create the value, right? And then there's a user journey, community journey kind of thing, where I think that anyone coming into our ecosystem should know and learn about the tokens in a way that's helpful, playful, fun, and useful, right? So, and that's something that we haven't been really good at, right? Because just giving an example, if you onboard into the Wombat app, you do see your Wombat balance is 0, but there is no explanation why it's there, what you can do with it, why it's cool, right? So what we want is to expose everyone who comes onto the platform to the value, to the mechanics behind the token, expose them to the token itself, right? So it's maybe easier to get the token or tokens, and have a lot more things that you can do. So eventually where we want to go is that any user who comes on any of our ecosystem products, or maybe not even the products, but anywhere, should be exposed and contribute to the value of the tokens.
So it sounds like you definitely have, you kind of said it yourself, that marketing has been a weak spot, and it sounds like you have massive plans on the marketing side and branding side and narrative side. But I want to piggyback to what you said before when it comes to you're changing the mechanics, right? So there we're obviously directly talking about token utilities. And right now you have everything from staking to VIP systems to trading fee returns and rewards. Like you just said, there's a bunch of planned utilities for WAS. But we've been talking about a real shift towards becoming a real, Web3 business, and we've talked about that internally. And obviously, there's a lot of emerging technologies and mechanics that can really be woven into a true Web3 company when you're talking about sharing value and contributing value together, right? So obviously there's a massive amount of a surge of AI and AI technologies and capabilities. Obviously there are different ways of talking about data privacy and protecting data privacy while still contributing resources into networks through deep-in mechanics. You've already mentioned governance quite heavily, and I know we've been talking about these things, but is this stuff that you're considering or keeping in mind or actually actively planning as a way to, as actual token and product utilities, in order to generate more value and in order to share more of that value with the stakeholders?
Definitely. There's a lot of things that we're currently looking into, for both from a mechanical, but also from exactly what I just mentioned, this kind of exposure to the thing, right? Or exposure to the tokens inside of our products. And there is a very good both narrative to be built, but also very tangible value that's being created by deepen like things, right? So with deepen, what we mean is that you basically use resources that you have or create to basically sell them or market them to outside parties, like another Web3 deepen network or whoever, or somebody who wants to buy them, and then sharing the value that's being generated with that or being created with that with the person who basically creates that value, right? So that could be your phone resources. It could be a little bit of a bandwidth. There could be, data that you create, right? That you can basically maybe hand to somebody else who wants the data. But obviously in a Web3 sense, not doing that implicitly like a Web2 platform, but explicitly by basically opting into, hey, I allow my anonymized data to be used and pushed somewhere else where somebody who wants to use that data can actually pay me to use that data, right? And so I think there's a lot of options out there with a lot of the deepen and decentralized. I mean, deepen technically is physical infrastructure, right? But there's also non-physical infrastructure that can be contributed to. So I think that's a big thing, right? All the while basically keeping the ownership of your own identity, the ownership of your data, because that's something that we never wanted. That's also why we don't have ads. So there's a lot of other things that can be done that tie more into what people do anyway, instead of directing their attention to something that they actually don't really want.
So you're talking about a lot about data and behaviors here. Obviously, the big hot topic in the world is machine learning and AI. Is there a reason why you're talking specifically about what you do in data and that, like, are you heading in that direction? I know I'm not going to ask you to reveal massive stuff, but it sounds like
we're looking at it. For us, it's a lot about social interactions as well, right? How can being generous help a community, and how can AI, for instance, play into this, right? So I would say it's too early to reveal anything definite, but there's a lot of things that are very, very interesting on that end. And there is a very, very good basis with the things that we already have to actually explore and dive into things. And what I think, though, is AI has been developing so quickly that it's really, really scary if you don't know whether there's a person or an AI, whatever AI is, right? You're talking to or you're interacting with. All these reverse Turing tests where it's really hard to find out who the real person is, right? If there's just one person and three AIs talking to one another. So that's scary. So that's something that we definitely want to look into as well. How can we make that? How can we employ certain things without actually making them scary?
Lots of really, I mean, it sounds like you're definitely has a lot of things coming that are utility based that you have in mind. But you talked about you've talked about the ecosystem a lot, and you also, you're a platform full of playing games. What's your view on ecosystem tokens versus product or game specific tokens? Obviously right now, I mean, you have two ecosystem tokens, and you're consolidating your communities, you're consolidating the brand. What's your overall view on ecosystem versus game specific, and is there a chance that we might see some version of consolidation here somewhere as well?
You're putting me on the spot here again, right? So when it comes to ecosystem tokens, when we acquired Wazer, we acquired a Waz token with it, or well, whatever you acquire when you acquire a token, right? That's a big question. So there was a little bit of a treasury, maybe, right? And then there's the community and the holders, and so there was a big question on how is that going to fold into the existing or the rest of the ecosystem and the Wombat token, right? And so long as it's not in the way of explaining to somebody onboarding what's the difference between one and the other, I think it's totally fine. They can coexist, and there may be reasons why you want that, because you may want to keep the economies separate. But if the majority of the reasons point into, hey, if the ecosystem grows, we benefit, and it's hard to tell apart why is this token being used instead of that token, then this might be ripe for a consolidation, right? Whereas when we talk about quote unquote random games, so games that don't have their economy and their basically ecosystem intertwined, right? Then I think having separate tokens is probably, I'm not saying better, but it feels slightly easier to handle from an economic perspective, because then your one economy doesn't influence your other economies, because they're not designed to be influenced by one another, right? So, I mean, Illuvium is a great example where these games are intertwined by design, right? But if the games are totally different and totally separate, and this is the direction that we're going with our games, for example, then I think having specific tokens might be fine or even better.
I like that you said this, the direction we're taking with our games. You obviously recently acquired Chain Monsters. Are you hinting there might be an actual separate game economy specifically for Chain Monsters?
I mean, the game was live. It had its economy, right? The game had 200,000 players signed up with it, and hundreds, even thousands playing every day. So there was a game economy. There just was not a token, right? So should this game economy have a token? Well, that's the first question that you might want to ask, right? It's not a given, right? Right now, people talk a lot more about game tokens than game NFTs. But look back 2 or 2.5 years, nobody was talking about game tokens. Everyone was talking about game NFTs, right? So there was a lot of kind of back and forth about this. So we don't want to make kind of rush decisions on this is what it has to be just because, right? But it should add actual value, and then there will be, if we decide that there should be a token for the Chain Monsters game, then I would say it's fairly likely that there's a separate token. And then I can anticipate your next question. What's going to be in for the existing ecosystem token holders? I think there's a bunch of cool ways of how you can intertwine that can range from the obvious airdrop thing, where you drop a bunch of the tokens from the new game or new tokens to existing token holders. And this is cool because you could perpetuate that, right? You could say, okay, what happens if the next game comes out with its own token, and the next, and the next, and the next? And being a game publisher would definitely come with a vision of publishing a bunch of games, not just one, right? So that would make sense. But there's also having using the ecosystem tokens as liquidity hubs for the individual game tokens, which is also really nice, right? Because then you have a little bit of the feedback in terms of the economies. One economy grows, the other economy benefits from that, but also you have rich liquidity potentially for these tokens. So there's a bunch of ways of how you can intertwine that on the very, again, mechanical level, but then on a kind of user journey level, there's obviously a lot more that you can do there as well.
Sounds good. I will ask though, and if there are any kind of future consolidation efforts made in any way on the ecosystem level, I'm assuming it would be done in a way that everybody would be really happy about.
Coming back to managing expectations, making everybody happy might be a little bit of a stretch, and basically promising that I'll make everyone happy.
Would you be happy?
I would.
That's good. So it sounds like there is a lot happening going forward, and a lot happening in the next few days. We've spent almost an hour here now. I'm assuming there will be probably some follow-ups on this. If people have questions, they should probably post them. Telegram, where you will see in the new Telegram, where you will see it, and then the team will see it. Twitter is obviously okay. Will we see more of these kind of conversations as we talked about previously?
I hope so. I hope that we will have some people get interested or excited, maybe angry about what we're saying here, right? So they better reach out and tell us, right? I always appreciate when there's a discussion and people don't just silently move away and never say anything, right? So I always appreciate that much more, to have an open discussion. So if there's appetite for this being a regular format, we can totally have that. People know I don't mind, right? I spent 2 hours of my Mondays on Twitch, so everyone is welcome to join there. I'm curious. I'm really curious, and I'm looking forward to those discussions.
Fantastic. Is there anything specific that you're more excited about than something else? Like, where's your head now? What's next for Adrian? Whether it's work, family, private, games, what's next? What are you really looking forward to?
Oh my God. I like seeing things grow, right? So that's really something I enjoy. That's why I enjoy plants, because you can, whenever you look, it's a bit stupid, right? But whenever you look, you can see something has changed. So I like seeing the company and the community grow, right? That's what I'm really excited about all the things that we've had and that might have or might look like they are loose ends right now, right? To getting this together into one big thing where everyone says, oh, this makes sense, right? So this is what I'm truly excited about, getting there together with everyone, with you, with the community, with anyone watching this, with obviously the people in the company. That's basically what I look towards.
Is there would you say that there's a series of announcements coming up that people should look forward to?
Again, me being me and not trying to hype things up, right? Although I can get excited about it, and I hardly like it's really hard for me to get excited about something like and show it, right? But I don't want to overpromise again, right? But yes, I think there's gonna be a lot of things. We've started that to an extent with some big partnerships that we've been announcing and Chain Monsters, right? So for us, obviously, this is the start of the next step. This is the start of this evolution, and I hope that everyone watching will also enjoy and appreciate reading and hearing about the things that are going to be changing, that we will be very vocal about, and I hope that everyone else will chime in, right? So there's a lot to come, for sure.
Fantastic. Anything else you want to add and say before we go?
Have fun and enjoy building with us.
Fantastic. Take care, everyone, and we will see you soon.
Thanks. See you soon. Thanks, Thomas.